This is your daily dose of all things royal. Welcome back, my gorgeous, good looking friends. Today, I want to take a moment and talk about this gentleman sitting in the front seat of this cab during this so called catastrophic car chase in Gridlock, New York City last year. Even though being a part of Meghan and Harry's security detail, Chris Sanchez was the delegated spokesperson and told CNN that he believed the paparazzi put the public in danger, claiming there were about a dozen vehicles, cars, scooters, and bicycles chasing them, in which eyewitnesses said that that was not the case, thus debunking this whole entire narrative that Harry and Meghan wanted to be put out. So the question is, why would the security detail, who is a former Secret Service agent under Obama, go along with this ridiculous plan? Could this staged car chase have been a part of Torchstone Global's proactive mitigation of risk strategy? I don't know. Let's take a look at the company that Chris Sanchez is a vice president of. So, Torchstone Global's tagline, the business of before, proactive protection, enlightened thinking. So, does it mean magical thinking? Is this kind of where we're going with this? So, in Christopher's bio, it says Christopher Sanchez has 22 years of experience in the fields of national security, crisis management, forensic investigations, advanced threat protection, and site vulnerability assessments. He is currently a vice president with Torchstone Global and assists clients in all industries to include business, financial, legal, regulatory, and reputational risk. Mr. Sanchez specializes in conducting site security advances and criminal investigations, as well as physical threat and vulnerability assessments to include protective intelligence investigations. He also assists clients in achieving their desired level of protection in accordance with the Department of Homeland Security's Safety Act. Christopher helps professional sports teams manage threats and increase opportunities to team players, ownership organizations, and events by integrating key capabilities to help sports organizations and event venues manage threats to their brand, their teams, and their fans. Previously, Mr. Sanchez was a managing director for the Mintz Group and director with PwC in the global intelligence practice, where he led PwC's sports intelligence team, as well as the enterprise physical security practices. Christopher was a special agent for the United States Security Service, Secret Service, where he investigated crimes against the government, acts of terrorism, and spent 5 years on the Presidential Protection Detail. Christopher has conducted multiple security advances for the First Family, both domestically and internationally throughout Europe and the Middle East. Just so you know, the Mintz Group is a large private investigation firm. So think about PIs on crack. So going back to Torchstone Global, they really are in the business of protecting the uber elite. And for the most part, the people that make up this Torchstone Global just so happens to come out of the Department of Homeland Security. So if you guys didn't know, now you know. And also, people that you saw with Meghan and Harry during the Invictus Games also served Hillary Clinton, such as Christopher Keenan, who is a part of Torchstone Global as a vice president and had spent 18 years domestically and abroad as a special agent with the U.S. Department of State's Diplomatic Security Services, called DSS, which is the diplomatic services that Harry and Prince William, as well as Princess Catherine and any royal member, have to use whenever they come to the United States. So just a fun fact for everyone, Kamala Harris used the services of Torchstone Global for her security during her run for president that failed. I'd like to point out that Kamala Harris is a shining example of how DEI fails. When you don't hire people on qualifications but on the color of their skin, you see results like what we have going on at the border. Kamala is the border czar, and she was put in charge of overseeing and monitoring the situation, which she's clearly done a piss poor job. Now she's also assigned as the AI czar, so God only knows how messed up that's going to be if we have 4 more years of this. Now, if you take the time to go through and read the bios of the people who work for this company, you'll realize they're all former FBI agents as well as Department of Homeland Security, secret agents. It's a little alarming that they're offering services in which some of them still have top secret security clearance within our government. Help me understand how this is even possible. All these former government officials had served the Obama and Clinton administrations. So, what does that tell you? Also, the fact that they still have access to some of these tools and information should be concerning to everyone, considering that right now we have the most corrupt government in place, and DHS, right now being head by Mayorkas, who also is the head of CISA, which is another agency within DHS, played a major role in the censorship industrial complex in 2020. Let's not forget Harry's alignment with Renee DiResta, who was also aligned with Chris Krebs and Alex Stamos. All these people are currently now getting sued in this Missouri versus Biden case, just so you know. So it's all there. But Chris Krebs was at the head of CISA during that time, cultivating this program in which it monitored conservative speech and worked with the social media companies to pull down American speech or deplatform people. And we saw this happening at the very same time Meghan and Harry had been doing the same thing to the Megxit community, which for the most part did have conservative voices. So here's what I want you to understand. Alejandro Mayorkas worked for President Obama in beginning this whole immigration crap and destroying this country. But in 2017, he left his position with the government because I'm guessing he didn't want to work for Trump and went to work in a private capacity. What people are failing to understand, or they're trying to keep on the down low, which it's been erased from the Wikipedia page, was that Alejandro Mayorkas was appointed by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in 2017 as chair of the Cyber Leadership Council, meaning he was chairman and heading up this council that literally just got spun up right after Trump got into office. The head of CISA, Chris Krebs, who also was a part of the Aspen Institute with Harry, was also participating on this Cybersecurity Leadership Council when Mayorkas was at the head of it. And the concerning thing about this is that these meetings were quote unquote off the record. So here you have a working group that involves both government officials and the private sector coming together in this private-public stakeholder partnership that the WEF likes to talk about, which, by the way, Alejandro Mayorkas is a WEFer. So you'll hear the scripted language that the globalists use coming out of Mayorkas' mouth, such as collectivism and guardrails, which is a code word for regulations. These are very real terms that the WEF likes to use to make this all sound like, yeah, we're all in this together, when in actuality, this is all about socialism and communism coming together. And being that Mayorkas had came from Cuba and was ass-licking Obama, we all know that he's part of the socialist agenda and has been serving the Democratic elites and their agenda. This is fact because he was investigated by the Inspector General for doing exactly that, showing favoritism to Hillary Clinton's brother in this EB5 scandal that happened back in 2015 under Obama's watch. Now, do I think that the same favoritism is going on with Prince Harry and his visa situation under Mayorkas? Yeah, I do. Now, I'm sure that a few of you might say, wait, TRG, Harry came over when it was the Trump administration. Yes, you are correct. However, the chances of the people processing Harry and getting his paperwork through were part of the legacy Obama administration. And of the 13,000 employees holding main positions came from the Obama administration. So whatever protocols or lack of protocols that they may have, most likely applied to Prince Harry in his processing of his paperwork or lack of paperwork, I would say. And I think part of the cover-up in all of this, because it's becoming more and more clear that there is a problem with paperwork within this Department of Homeland Security. This is what's all coming out now in all these illegals coming over the border with no documentation. From what I see, Obama's influence in the shadows has been very strong on this country when it comes to mobilizing groups of people to do certain things, whether it be online, whether it be over the border, whether it be within our government. There are ties that all go back to him. Now, I have shown in the past Meghan and Harry's alignment with all these people that came from Michelle and Barack Obama. So I don't think that that's any kind of coincidence. The question that I have for everyone again is, did the royal family have an idea of what Meghan and Harry were going to do when they came over to the United States? Let's refresh our memories. In 2019, while Meghan and Harry were still working members of the royal family, they hired two people. The first one, Sarah Latham, to be the head of their communications, and then there was Heather Wong, who became Meghan's deputy private secretary. Sarah previously served on Obama's transition team, helping him to secretly interview potential cabinet members for hire, and Heather Wong previously worked as a political appointee in the Obama administration as acting assistant secretary and deputy assistant secretary of public affairs at the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. So the point I'm trying to make with this and why I bring these two employees up is because it would be ridiculous to think that Meghan and Harry planned Megxit all by themselves. Let's think about Meghan and Harry's lives before they left. They had people around them practically 24/7, especially these advisors around them all day long. We would be so naive to think that none of them saw or heard anything about these two planning on just picking up and leaving, especially for a prince to just pick up and go move to a whole nother country. There would have been some inquiries as far as what would the process be, especially around the whole visa situation. Now, at the same time that they hired Heather Wong in August of 2019, they hired Fiona Micklewham, who was a former UK ambassador. She became the Sussex's private secretary and was present at the Sandringham summit. So my guess is this had a lot to do with Harry's status, not only his visa, but also with the security situation. Apparently, this private secretary was recommended by the palace. So you have to wonder, was she brought in to help with these affairs the same time Heather Wong was brought in, meaning that the palace had some idea as to what the couple was planning on doing? Now, I believe that there were people in the know as to what Meghan and Harry were planning on doing. And I believe that the two people that were hired here in the month of August officially kicked off this strategic plan on how to execute this in a way that was supposed to be successful, but it actually failed miserably. Now, it depends who was in the know and who wasn't in the know, and what was the real reason that they gave for making this separation, because they couldn't have done this by themselves. They needed the help of the palace in order to facilitate simple things such as moving their stuff, the paperwork, making sure that Harry is safe. Like, of course, they had to coordinate with the security folks. Like, these things take time. So for them to give this excuse that, they had to flee for their lives and leave in the middle of the night in March because they were discovered by the paparazzi is bullshit. Now, I have shown you evidence in the past of Meghan and Harry being in the United States way before they had stated or made up their story of fleeing to the United States because the paparazzi discovered them. The palace had to have known to a certain degree what the couple were up to from a logistics perspective, right? We'd be naive to think that they were totally in the dark, especially since they have security detailing them 24/7. The palace was aware that Meghan and Harry were in California visiting tech giants, as well as going to Stanford University to talk to Tristan. My guess is that Harry sold this narrative to Prince Charles at the time, that he wanted to change the media landscape, in which he did admit on the ITV interview where he said that his father said it was a suicide mission. So there's no doubt that conversations were taking place between the prince and his father about his vision in making the online world a safer place, aka censor it. Now, what has me on the fence is, did Prince Charles know about Harry and Meghan quietly being a part of the Biden campaign? You almost have to wonder when you look back at all the activities that Meghan and Harry engaged in pertaining to the election while using their titles. You have to wonder, why didn't the palace take any kind of action, especially since we had a congressman who wrote to the ambassador saying that this is pure election interference. I don't think the Queen was so aware of what Meghan and Harry had been doing, but I do believe that Charles had some kind of idea and was okay with it because he equally supports this collectivism WEF world that they're trying to force on us. We do know that the relationship with the Bidens and the Obamas are a lot tighter with the royal family than they were with Donald Trump. And that's because Donald Trump doesn't share the same ideas around saving the planet that the royal family has. Now, I don't necessarily think that Charles knew or understood that his son was going to be aligning with a censorship industrial complex, essentially violating American civil rights. But I do think that there was an element of understanding that he wanted to change the media landscape, in which Harry does admit that. So, to a certain extent, Charles knew the work that Harry was doing, but may not have understood fully how this affected our civil rights, which is a serious thing, as he was a part of the group that influenced and affected the outcome of our election, which would be considered election interference. Then proceeded to continue aligning with these groups in the censorship industrial complex to censor Americans. And being that the media is complicit with this might be a reason why not many people understand how all these dots are connected. To give you an idea as to how serious this really is, take a listen to Mike Johnson explain to what this Department of Homeland Security's, the department that does not want to disclose Harry's visa information, had been doing to the American people instead of protecting the Americans at the border.
Secretary Mayorkas, we have the frustrating responsibility on this committee of providing oversight of your agency, but I have to be honest and tell you, I'm not sure exactly what you do at the Department of Homeland Security other than great harm. On your watch, the data is pretty clear. We've had record levels of illegal immigration, a rapid decline in deportations, skyrocketing fentanyl deaths across our country, and the Secret Service, which is a DHS component, can't determine who left cocaine at the White House. In the middle of all this, you created this Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Agency, CISA, which is a division of DHS. And it's one of the Biden administration agencies that colluded with and coerced the social media companies to censor Americans' protected free speech online. That's specifically detailed in a 155-page court opinion that came out of the federal court in Louisiana in the landmark litigation of Missouri v. Biden. Have you read that court opinion?
Congressman, I have not, and the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency does not censor speech.
Okay, well, the court found otherwise, and it's really curious to me. Actually, it's quite alarming that you haven't read the opinion, because your agency is listed in this opinion. The federal court looked at volumes of evidence over months of litigation, and they determined, among other things, that if the allegations made by the plaintiffs, the states in this case, are true, and hold on, the preliminary injunction was granted against your agency, sir, and other Biden administration agencies, including the DOJ and FBI, the court said it involves the most massive attack against free speech in United States history. And you're telling me this opinion issued July 4th has not reached your desk? No one's briefed you on it?
Oh, I have been briefed on the Missouri litigation.
Okay, but you haven't taken the time to read it yet.
Congressman,
no, hold on. Have you read it or not?
I have read parts of it, Congressman.
Oh, parts of it. Did you read the parts where it said that this is Orwellian and dystopian and that your agency is involved in a massive cover-up of specifically conservatives' free speech online?
Congressman, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency is not involved in such conduct.
Okay, well, the court found otherwise, and you stand here under oath and you give us these answers that we know are not true because this is demonstrably untrue. I'm suggesting to you that you're saying things to us under oath that are proven by the record to be untrue. Let me ask you about this specifically. CISA was created to, we call it the Misinformation and Disinformation Subcommittee of CISA. You familiar with that? MDM, the MDM subcommittee, you're familiar with that?
Congressman, I am very well aware of the threat of disinformation emanating from adverse nations.
Are you familiar with the subcommittee? Just answer the question.
I am.
Okay. Does it still exist?
Congressman, are you speaking of the?
Does the MDM subcommittee still exist?
I would have to get back to you on that.
Okay. All right. Kind of a big deal in your agency. I'm kind of shocked that you don't know the answer to that. Can you define what misinformation is?
Congressman, misinformation is false information that is disseminated to.
Excellent. Who determines what is false?
Congressman, our focus.
No, who determines what is false in your agency? If you're going to pull something off the internet and collude with a social media platform to make sure Americans don't see it, who determines what's false?
Congressman, we don't do that.
That's not true. That is not true. That is not what the court has found. This is not a Republican talking point. This is what the documents show. We've had people testify under oath that say, and you just defined the term, you're telling me that you don't know who determines what is false?
Congressman, what we do at CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, is identify the tactics that adverse nation states use to weaponize disinformation.
Okay, what is disinformation? What is disinformation?
Disinformation is inaccurate information.
Who determines what's inaccurate? Who determines what's false? Do you understand the problem here? The reason the framers of our Constitution did not create an exception for quote unquote false information from the First Amendment is because they didn't trust the government to determine what it is. And you have whole committees of people in your agency trying to determine what they define as false or misinformation.
That is not true.
Well, then what is true?
Please
enlighten us.
What we do is we disclose the tactics that adverse nation states are utilizing to weaponize disinformation.
No, sir. The court found specifically, it's a finding of fact that is not disputed by the government defendants, the Biden administration, your agency, the FBI, or DHS, not in the litigation. They determined you and all of your cohorts made no distinction between domestic speech and foreign speech. So don't stand there and tell me under oath that you only focused on adversaries around the world, foreign actors. That's not true.
Congressman, the Missouri case, the litigation to which you refer, is the subject of continuing litigation.
But the facts were not disputed, and I so regret that I'm out of time. I hope I get some more yielded. I yield back.
I would really love to see H.G. Tudor give his opinion on this guy because to me, he's screaming raging narcissist and psychopath. He doesn't seem to care that he, has caused so much damage to this country and Americans are dying due to this fentanyl crisis that we have as a result of his dereliction of duty. Mayorkas has the same arrogance that Meghan has, knowing that he has the backing of the president. It's the same type of arrogance that Meghan had because she, at the time, had the backing of the royal family. This is a perfect example of what it would be like if Meghan Markle was in some type of powerful office. It's some really scary stuff when the wrong people are put in power. And think about it, if these people, like the Meghan Markles and liberals who want to censor speech, think about all the things that we wouldn't know about, like this African parks and the abuses that are happening in Africa. This is why we have to protect this amendment at all costs and hold Harry accountable for his interference here and being a part of this. I really hope the Heritage Foundation understands that this is more than just finding out whether or not Harry lied on his application about his drug use. This is about Harry's contribution to his influence and interference in the outcome of our election, which, by the way, as a result of this current administration, who has put Americans' safety and lives in danger with an open border of unvetted illegal migrants crossing. If you want to know a little bit more about how serious this situation is, head on over to the reading room. I go over this letter that was sent by former FBI agents that talk about what they are seeing and their concern for our national security. It truly is a frightening thing, but people need to understand what this administration has allowed to go on in putting American safety in harm's way. And we all have the Meghan and Harrys of the world to thank for this shit that we're in now. I want people to realize and understand that and why I go so hard at these two when it comes to our rights. But what do you guys think? Definitely leave your thoughts below. As always, I will be back with more content. But until then, please be safe, and I'll talk to you later. Bye!
It was such a fraud.